apple. 3 a.m.
What to the Negro is science and futurism? This month in 1852, Frederick Douglass gave one of his most well-known speeches when he discussed the 4th of July in relationship to the black person in America. His speech was called, "What to the Slave is the 4th of July?" I'd like to ask, what to the Negro is science fiction and futurism? And I'd like to discuss what the future looks like for Black Americans. Taking into account the protests and insurrections going on around the country, I'd like to ask a question of the non-Black people who are in these protests. When I look at these videos, I see beer white faces, beer non-black faces, and y'all are the ones getting roughed up. Y'all are the ones roughing up the police. Y'all are the ones getting spirited away in these unmarked minivans. Why now? Why not a year ago? What's the difference between right now and a year ago? Why not 6 years ago when folks was moving from wherever, moving into black towns and pricing out those same black people who you're protesting for their black lives? Why not years ago when you were saying to black people, oh, things are good now, slavery's over, civil rights is over, stop complaining, pull yourself up by your bootstraps? Because all of y'all was saying that. So what changed? I'm genuinely interested to know what changed between then and now that y'all are now seeing that black life in America is unsustainable. And beyond why now, how much stamina do y'all got? Because if no laws change, or if some laws change and black folks are still being treated the way that we've been treated, how much stamina y'all got? We've been in this 504 years now. What if all this stays the same? That's the main question. What if all this stays the same? Racial wealth gap, disproportionate over-policing of black people, gentrification, overrepresentation in negative Hollywood movies, underrepresentation in the government. If all this stays the same, where do you see black people in the next 50 years, in the next 100 years, in the next 1,000 years? On this channel, we've discussed 3 works of literature. We discussed Aftermath, 2001, and Jazzy, Melanin. 3 pretty different views of the future in the United States. Through those works, I'd like to discuss 3 possibilities for black future in America. So the first one we'll look at is 2001, A Space Odyssey by Arthur C. Clarke. Classic sci-fi by a multi-genius writer. He wrote this book he published it in 1968 in the height of the civil rights desegregation era. And it was well received. Now, in this time of mass protests, mass violence, state violence, in this book, there is a hole where black people should be. We're non-existent in 2001. You don't hear anything about black countries who were also being decolonized at the time. One after the other, countries from Dr. Clarke's native land, native empire, were being freed. But you don't hear anything about the African or Caribbean nations, what they're doing. You don't hear anything about the black people in America and the mass protests that are going on. It's obvious that Dr. Clarke saw those things happening, but he didn't see it fit to write it into his story. Cool, his story. He could write whatever he wants. But we're not there. And so that begs the question, where are we? Where are we? Either we've been neutralized, where we're just quiet and not doing anything anymore. Either we've been destroyed and we just don't exist, or maybe we've been mixed out of existence. Either way, we're not there. The Russians are there, the Chinese are there, the Japanese are there. Everybody's there on the same trajectory that they were on in the 60s, but black people. As it stands, we represent what, 10, 20% of the population, depending on where you draw the line and what a black person is and what a non-black person is. So yeah, 10 to 20% of the population, but we're not present in the story, right? The same goes for the three-body problem. You got loads of different groups, specific groups too, well into the future. Australians are still a thing. All the European nations are present. Venezuela is still a thing, but you don't find black people. Another example is the story Aurora by Kim Stanley Robinson. Now, this story is of a generation ship, an O'Neill cylinder actually, that goes from Earth to a star, and in that O'Neill cylinder is different levels, different biomes. You have an ice biome, a forest biome, a desert biome. You got all these biomes in this, and in these biomes you got people living there. Now, in this story, you got a population of Inuit people living in the ice biome. Now, Inuits are like such a small population on the earth. But even in that story, you don't see black people. Now, I know somebody might say, but come on, Coke. These are non-black people writing stories. Okay. Non-black people writing stories. Cool. Don't write about it if you don't want to. But don't expect that I'm not gonna look at this story and say, black people are real on the one hand, but black people aren't real in this story that's supposed to be of the future. Why? Okay. Let's not forget one of my modern favorites, the Expanse series. It's another story where so many groups are present. Even new groups are present, but you don't find black people. Not like that. You have some sprinkled in. Like in the Expanse, you have the Belters, who seem to be basically an extraction of the third world, or what we call the third world, or the developing world today. That's basically who the Belters are. But even when they're described, there's very few that are ever described as black people. You have unmixed Chinese people in that story. You have unmixed white people in that story. You have Indians in that story. But where are the black people? 10 to 20% of the population in 2020. 0.1% of the population, it seems, by these sci-fi books in the future. What happened? Was there a genocide? Did we pack up and leave? What happened? Let me know. It's cool. Don't put me in the story. But at least let me know why I'm not in the story. Because then what happens is, for me at least, I begin to feel like this story makes no sense. It's no longer sci-fi to me. It's now fantasy or speculative fiction, because you're not explaining to me what's happening here. This major plot hole, you're not explaining it to me. So no, it's no longer sci-fi. It's no longer hard sci-fi to me. Because hard sci-fi is not just explaining the technology. It's making it make sense in light of what's happening in the world. Okay, it's a plot hole. When I don't see black folks, it's a plot hole. And it's cool. I'll keep reading. But in the back of my head, I know that this is just maybe it's somebody's fantasy of what the world could look like without black folks. And write your fantasy, do your thing. That's what sci-fi is for. Allowing humans to see a beautiful future that they wish that they could have. Go for it. So that's the first view of black future, that maybe we just won't be here. Maybe we won't be here. Maybe something will happen. Maybe mass incarceration will continue. We'll continue to disrupt our families and disrupt our homes and disrupt our lives to the point where we reach a critical mass of disruption where we can't continue. Maybe a final solution will be implemented for the Negro, and we're dealt with in whatever way. Maybe some aliens swoop in, snatch us out, and, we live in space somewhere. That's the first view of black future. We're not here, we're neutralized, and the rest of the non-black world moves on without us. I mean, and honestly, as it stands right now, that looks like the most logical future for black folks as we are right now. If you look at us as a whole, we don't have a space program, so to speak, of. Virtually all countries that are majority black are at the bottom of most metrics. Like when you put metrics up of countries, life expectancy, infant mortality, GDP, happiness index, we're generally, maybe not happiness, but the other ones, we're generally at the bottom. So at this rate, in 100 years of being at the bottom of all the metrics, where will black people be? What about 500 years of being at the bottom of all the metrics? Where will we be? Okay, so now let's look at the second title, Aftermath. In this story, we are quite prominent. We are basically the main character of Aftermath is Black America. Black America is a main character, and the other American groups are also main characters. Okay? But in this story, while we're prominent, it's almost as if we're in a neo-enslavement. I'm not going to reveal the nature of that enslavement, but let's just say that we're in some kind of new type of refined enslavement because of the because of the war that went on. Now that's an interesting future, because slavery still happens on the earth. Take a look at Libya. You got chattel slavery actually going on in Libya, Mauritania, some of the Arab countries, and who knows where else. This is just what we know. There's probably wild stuff going on that we don't even know about. You got chattel slavery going on over there. And along with chattel slavery in Africa and Asia, you have slavery also going on in the United States. A lot of times I read on the internet, we were the first to free y'all. We freed y'all, and so you should be thankful. But nah, slavery's still going on in the United States right now to this day. For those of y'all foreigners who don't know, according to the American constitutional amendments, you can enslave people only if they are convicted of a crime. In that case, you're allowed to enslave people. And so what happens is the United States has millions of people that are locked in prisons, and that population is allowed to be enslaved. And they are. It happens. Like, cheap prison labor is sold to the highest bidder publicly. It's not a secret. It happens. And who are the most and who are disproportionately housed in these prisons? Take a guess. You got one guess. Right, black people. Black people are disproportionately housed. How disproportionate? Well, we're 12% of the population according to the census, and according to prison censuses, we're around 50% of the population. So around 50% of the population of American slaves in 2020 are black people, right? 50% of the population of the slave population in the United States are black people. If we follow that to its logical conclusion, in the future, if this slave labor is allowed to continue, where will we be? Okay, so that's the second idea of black future, is a re-implementation on a mass scale of American enslavement. So now let's look at the final story of Jazzy Melanin. In this story, our greatest thinkers, our greatest minds said, this is unsustainable. It's not working. This isn't working at all. We have to find a way out of this, or it's going to get ugly. It's going to get ugly. So our greatest scientists went to the chalkboard, went to the lab, and was able to find technology that only we could deal with, that only we could activate. They were able to find technology and begin to use it to defend our people, to defend our ideas, to defend our progress against those that will do harm. They looked at the history books and they saw, okay, we've made progress here, we've made progress. We've been making all kinds of progress in this country and elsewhere, but the progress is always rolled back. It's always rolled back by those who are jealous, those that are more powerful than us, and those that are scared of us making progress. Those that feel like the United States is a zero-sum game. If black people gain, then these people lose. They see that pattern, and they said, we need to stop that from happening. Obviously, I'm most interested in the future where black people exist, where we're happy, productive, and content. Not interested in genocide. I'm not interested in erasure. I'm not interested in alien abduction of black people. And I'm definitely not interested in enslavement. Whether it's neo-enslavement, chattel enslavement, quasi-enslavement, I'm good on that. I'm interested in the future where our greatest thinkers develop sciences based on foundations that are inaccessible to those that would do us harm. That melanin science, that's the future I could get behind. Some other science that builds a defense mechanism, I'm interested in that. I'm all the way interested in that. I have a question for those of you who watch this video, those of you who've gotten this far, gotten to the end. I have a question. I'd love to see it in the comments or in, private message me on any of my socials that are there. Where do you see black people in the next 100, 500,000 years? And be logical about it. Be thoughtful about it. Don't just hit me with some, I see us all being friends and nah. Logically, where do you see us in the next 1,000 years? Or anywhere before 1,000? Or even in the next 10,000 years if you want to go that far? Let's talk about it. And be logical about it. Look at where we are today. Look at where we were 500 years ago. Look at where we were 5,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago. My historians out there. And use that to tell me where we'll be in the next 100, 500,000 years from now. And why? Will we be gone? Will we be mixed up and, everybody will be some shade of light brown on Earth? Will we be here but enslaved in some way? Let's talk about it. And if you can't think of a idea, you could also link up with some literature that also show Black people in a logical, positive light. Honorary mention to Blue Remembered Earth by Alistair Reynolds. Honorable mention to that. I had some issues with it, but it was cool. We had Black people in the future living their life. Any more examples like that, put me on. And with that, I'll close. Thanks for watching. Thanks for viewing. Let me get them comments, likes, subscribes, all of that. Peace.